Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a fresh and insightful interview with one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on Google Play Music, iTunes, Stitcher, or on our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/thedirectorscut. And if you're enjoying The Director's Cut, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. We love hearing your feedback. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Noah Baumbach's new film, The Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected. Starring Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, and Elizabeth Marvel, the film tells the emotional tale of three adult siblings who converge in New York to attend an event dedicated to their strong-willed artist father. While there, they must deal with both his fading legacy and the long shadow he has cast over their lives. In addition to The Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, Mr. Baumbach's credits include the feature films Mistress America, While We're Young, Frances Ha, Margot at the Wedding, The Squid and the Whale, and Kicking and Screaming. Following a recent screening at the DGA Theater in New York, Mr. Baumbach spoke with director Brian de Palma about the filming of The Meyerowitz Stories. During their conversation, Mr. Baumbach discusses how the title of the film helped him to consider its structure and organization, the movies that really connected with him as a teenager, and the personal nature of the films he's directed.
We were here for my friend Jake Paltrow and I did a documentary about Brian, and we had a premiere here, right? Yeah, so it's nice to be back.
Okay, here we go. Let's go over the titles. Did you choose the titles for your films?
The titles meaning?
The title of the film.
I chose the title of the film.
Okay,
yeah.
let's start with.
Why did I choose it?
Let's go through them.
Oh, go through all my titles?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
We have Kicking and Screaming. Yes.
Now, how did you get that idea for a title?
Well, it was originally called Fifth Year, that movie. Meaning the fifth year of college, because it was, and I was told by the company that financed it that it was not commercial. So then one day when I was scouting locations, I had the expression Kicking and Screaming came into my head. It seemed maybe that would be good. I didn't have the foresight to know that Will Ferrell would do a soccer movie with the same title. Otherwise, I might have thought again about it or pushed for Fifth Year. So that's that one. The second one was called Mr. Jealousy. That was the only title that one had. Then The Squid and the Whale. I was also told not to call that movie that because it would sound like it was animated. And
why was it called The Squid and the Whale?
Because of the Natural History Museum exhibit.
There's an exhibit with a squid and a whale?
Yes, that features in the movie, yes.
And you see it in the movie?
You see it at the very end of the movie, and he tells a story about it.
Okay.
Then onward, the next one is Margot at the Wedding, which for a long time was actually called Nicole in the Country when I wrote it. And then I cast Nicole Kidman. So I changed her name to Margot, and then I had to come up with a new title. It took a while. I think I came up with the name in post, actually. It was Untitled Noah Baumbach Project for a long time. Then the next one was Greenberg. It's the name of Ben Stiller's character of that in that movie.
And it was always Greenberg.
It was always Greenberg. And that one I was thinking about sort of like novels in the 70s, like Philip Roth type novels, or Saul Bellow, like Herzog or Zuckerman. I was sort of so that was that one. Then Frances Ha is her name. Yep. And
with a great ending.
Yes, the ending explains the title. That was a good moment. I saw that movie the first time at the Telluride Film Festival, and it got a gasp at the end, and I didn't see that coming, and I was very proud of that. Mistress America, I guess or While We're Young and Mistress America, which were shot in different order than they came out. And that brings us up to date, right? The Meyerowitz Stories. De Palma? Yes. Which
reasons.
Was named after the director, yeah. And the Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, yeah. Was the title of,
And how did you come up with it?
Well, I thought that when I was working on it, I think that to think of it as a collection of stories somehow helped me write it, to sort of think of it, I think, in retrospect, I think partly to think about how I was going to organize it with the brothers being separated, not being in the same movie. Also, because I knew I was working with Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller, that in some ways I was keeping them out of the movie together, that there was something that seemed interesting about that, to sort of hold that. And then also, I think it also, like, in a way, the structure of the movie helped. I think I saw it as like stuff that was omitted was equally important in a way, like that, you don't see Harold go into the hospital, you don't see, there's things you don't see, there's things that you are referred to that come, that just helped me kind of understand what would be in the movie, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for doing this.
Now, did you ever have a vertigo moment?
A what? Vertigo moment?
Yeah.
In that there was a movie that kind of made me want to make movies, or made me sort of see movies. Steve Martin in The Jerk.
Yes, you keep on referring to that, and I'm trying to get my head around it.
I don't know if that would be it. I think E.T. was a big movie for me as a kid. The first, the Robin Hood, the Errol Flynn Robin Hood, was a movie that really meant a lot to me as a kid. The Wizard of Oz also. I think wanting to, the sort of the vertigo moment maybe for me was more in college, was Jules and Jim.
Right.
Yeah. Was seeing something that had not, maybe that I knew that if I'd seen it even a year earlier, I would not have had the same reaction. It was like the right time to be seeing that movie. I was ready for it, and Goodfellas was in theaters at the same time, and I had seen that and loved it. And when I saw Jules and Jim, I was like, he's doing a version. I mean, a lot of Goodfellas felt like that movie. I later read an interview with him where he talked about that, but I felt like I saw it, and I felt like I thought, like, there's so much about movies that in this movie that I want to do, that made me want to go make them.
Now, did you make shorts when you were in your teens?
I made stuff on, I was sort of a teenager when, like, VHS came into the world, and these sort of like high 8 videos, and so I got one of those cameras, and I would make movies in the summers with my friends, and I would edit them on 2 VCRs. Right. With the rainbow between cuts, because I actually destroyed one of the VCRs burnt out because it was too much for them to do that. But I did that, and then I made like some shorts in college that were like silent.
Well, were you writing like 2 character scenes, the stuff that evolved into the features that you made?
You mean the movies I made later, or?
Yeah.
It was more the stuff that felt more like what I would later do was stuff I did in college. I did plays because right. I didn't, the technology, or at least the film department at Vassar where I went, they didn't have, I think if you were a film major, you could make a sound film by your senior year. And I found dialogue was so exciting to me, and something I felt like I really had something I did well naturally. And so it was hard for me not to want to do something that that had a lot of dialogue, and so I doing theater was my way of.
Did you do like
that.
2 character plays?
Yeah, I did. Or a few character plays. I did I did little plays. I did plays, but I didn't have like a real theater sense. They were really just movie ideas in plays. I'd seen some plays that I loved in as a teenager. Like I saw Fool for Love with I think I saw Will Patton in it, and I loved that. And I saw some David Mann. I saw, I think, Speed the Plow, and I didn't see a lot of theater because my parents, we lived in Brooklyn, and we didn't, not that it's that far, but we didn't like go to the theater so much. We went to a lot of movies. But when I did see theater that connected with me, it was exciting. So I sort of was drawing on that a little bit, but I knew I didn't really know how to stage theater, or I didn't see it in an instinctual
Proscenium.
way. Yeah.
How did we meet?
You and I met at, I think it was Paul Schrader's birthday party. Was it 50?
Who remembers?
And I came up to you. I had a few drinks, and I got the courage to go talk to you. And I remember I sort of started telling you all the movies I liked of yours. And I remember you saying, because I said, "Get to Know Your Rabbit," which is your first movie, and you said, "Get to Know Your Rabbit," like why are you picking that one? And then you, I think we exchanged numbers, and you called me the next day and said you should send me your movie, and or you watched my movie, I think, which was Kicking and Screaming at the time, and then I sent you my new script.
Right. And I believe you offered me a part.
I did. I offered you part of the therapist, and you said no. And but you said, "Don't worry, I turn everybody down." I turned Woody Allen down, so I felt in good company.
What's good now? When you made Mr. Jealousy, this was not a successful picture.
No, in a lot of ways it wasn't, but it was. I think I was 27 or something. It was crazy to be thinking I'd be making my second movie at 27. But I think it was. I hadn't fully learned how to do it yet. And I don't just mean shoot movies. I mean like even produce them and find the right collaborators. And I think that.
And you had a very successful debut.
Well, my first movie, was Kicking and Screaming. It had a nice reception and been
Was
at
it the New York Film Festival?
Yeah, which was great. Which kind of rescued it. It would have, I think, gone straight to video if they hadn't taken it.
What did you learn when your picture bombed?
I think retrospectively, at the time, I thought just, I was just, I was angry about it and thought it deserved better. In retrospect, I went into a period of figuring out, I knew I still wanted to make movies, but I think I needed to figure out who I was as a grown-up, as a filmmaker. I think I made movies so young that I was still kind of like doing the movies I thought I might make as a kid. And so it really was the process of me writing Squid and the Whale and ultimately making that movie, which was, it was, really like 7 years later, which was a hard 7 years. In retrospect, it's a good story, but at the time it was painful.
Do you start with just a series of scenes, or do you have some visual image for a movie?
It depends. I think, I know from you often have a visual that kind of helps you unlock other things. With Margot at the wedding, I had a visual. I had a mother and a kid on a train. That was the thing that I thought. With
Squid and the Whale?
Squid and the Whale, I had characters, I think, more. but with Squid and the Whale, I wrote it initially. I was writing adult siblings, and that's, you know, what went away and came back in another form as Meyerowitz. With Meyerowitz, I was thinking of, I mean, the hospital was a big part of, I mean, it's only a section of the movie, but it was a lot of what the sort of the feeling of the hospital. Maybe it wasn't like a visual image so much as like a specific image, but it was being this sort of personal and institutional clash that happens in hospitals, and I felt like I hadn't seen that quite in a movie. Frances had visuals. Frances, part of it was her running, which is, you know, a section of the movie. So it varies. I think, though, going back to your other thing, the structure of this structure also in Frances and in this movie was a big part of it.
Were you ever affected by a generation of filmmakers, like the filmmakers of the 70s or the French New Wave?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I think when I discovered the French New Wave, I felt that was very exciting for me, although not all of them is immediately accessible. I mean, Truffaut was immediately accessible. I think there's something, you know, about, I mean, The 400 Blows is just an accessible movie. Jules and Jim is an accessible movie for me anyway, when I was in college. I think like Romer, it took me to probably 10 years later to kind of really understand those movies, and then I love them as much as I love anything. Same thing with Bergman. I didn't quite get in college, even though I know maybe Bergman is sort of a college find for a lot of people. It wasn't for me. I didn't quite understand why, you know, I think something about the sort of Scandinavian thing, it just seemed so direct. I didn't quite get it, and now I love it. I love it as much as anything. Not that he's New Wave, but I'm just thinking about, you know, Godard, I still don't quite understand. I mean, I like some of them a lot, but I don't understand all of them. You know, Chabrol I always really loved. I loved all the sort of his thrillers, and Louis Malle I really like. The 70s filmmakers, you know, I mean, my formidable movie watching is all the early 80s. It's just my era. So that's why I say Steve Martin and The Jerk. That was the first R-rated movie I'd seen, and so that was a big deal because it was an R. And I loved it, and it was so funny, and I liked funny actors in movies, and I liked sort of following them, Bill Murray and him and Chevy Chase. And then I started to kind of get into, you know, like when I saw The Untouchables, or I saw After Hours, and, you know, the movies, your generation's movies, but in the 80s. I later went back and saw the 70s movies and loved those, you know, and got really into those. But I think I was, you know, it's like everybody's Bond is the Bond of their time, you know, and that was, you know, for me, it was like the movies of that time. The same thing with like musicians, you know, I'm like buying like the Bad Rolling Stones record from the 80s because that's the one I have, you know, and it's meaningful to me even now because it, you know, it connects me to that time, and I was excited about it then, even though I know, you know, Let It Bleed is a better record than, you know, Dirty Work, but you know, you were making great movies in the 80s, and so was Scorsese. I mean, it was sort of, you know, it was exciting too. And Woody Allen, I mean, I saw Broadway Danny Rose at the New Yorker, and you know, Zelig, and, you know, there was just some really exciting things then. And, you know, and then also I was seeing things like The Road Warrior and 48 Hours, and, you know, it was just all of that. It's like all of those movies of that, my childhood, the same way I know things for you, you know, are, even if other people don't see it, I see it all over all my movies.
When you saw these movies, did you go with a bunch of friends, or?
A lot of times my parents, because my parents were both critics, so at different times. So my father was a critic at the end of the 70s, in the early 80s. So that was also exciting for a kid. I got to see movies before they came out, which also made you want to like them more because they hadn't come out yet. And, some of them were obvious. They were like, I got to see E.T. before it came out, or I saw Empire Strikes Back before it came, that was like, it just got you credibility at school for a few weeks until it actually came out, and then it was like everybody caught up to you. But so I would go with them, and I think it was a way for my dad and me to bond. We just went to a lot of movies, and things that I was maybe a little too young for, like The Verdict, I remember seeing, but I kind of really liked it anyway, and I had all the lobby cards. They give you the things, and John Carpenter's The Thing was a big one. And
now we get to Margot at the wedding. Suddenly you have a well-known producer, Scott Rudin. How did that affect the making of the movie?
I mean, it did and it didn't, I guess. I mean, I had known Scott through Wes, because Wes Anderson had worked with him, and I had co-written 2 movies with Wes. So it wasn't an entirely new relationship, but it was new, in that way. I mean, Scott knew pretty much to leave me alone, but I'm sure it affected things in ways that I'm, certainly that if it hadn't been him, I don't know that I'm even totally aware of that, though.
Did he help with casting or anything?
He always has ideas and notes that he would give, but it wasn't, I mean, I in my mind I was still doing it the way I would do it, regardless.
What's your attraction to animated features?
Well, I think I like well, when Wes and I wrote Fantastic Mr. Fox, I think neither of us had ever made or been involved with an animated movie, and I think we didn't even know what it took. And we kind of wrote it like we were writing for adults, but knowing they were puppets, and I think that's kind of what's nice about the movie in a way. Wes then learned a lot about it, obviously, in the directing process. Then I, kind of met people at DreamWorks and Jeffrey, and when Jeffrey Katzenberg was there, and got involved in Madagascar, and I like how long it takes. I liked the sort of exacting nature of it, that you could kind of, I think Wes likes that too, and it's like that you can, you can really sort of, to a degree, try to perfect it, sort of almost like, I mean, so much of what we deal with in live action, which is also the beauty of it, is the sort of uncontrollable part of it. And, at least with animation, there's the sort of illusion that you can control it more.
Your father said, Noah's joke is that the squid and the whale was me at my worst, Margot was Georgia at her worst, and Greenberg was him at his worst. Is that true?
No. But that's why it was a joke. But I guess what it gets into is that there is, elements of me, and they're all me in a way, and not me at all. I mean, it's just that thing. It's like, you get asked it all the time of like, how much of it is autobiographical? What is this? Is this, do you know people? My feeling is, I feel like I owe it to what I'm doing to be as open and uncensored as possible, and try to be as truthful as I can be, in a way that's entertaining and right for the movie. And, the side effect of it is you get asked about how much of it is autobiographical every movie you make. So, but, I think, it's all, I wouldn't do it if it felt exposed in a real way. I always feel protected by it because of, what I know I'm doing and what I am doing, which is creating, using personal stuff as a bed to create, to let my imagination kind of, trying to give it as much of a chance as possible to, provide me with something.
What's the advantage of doing off-the-radar projects?
Well, I think with Francis, I felt like, I felt like, part of it was also coming with technology was at a point where I felt like, we could all just be making a movie right now. Let's just, if we had a movie at a Q&A at the DGA, we could probably figure out a way, just someone could be back there with a camera and nobody would have to be bothered by it, and we could just sort of do it. And I thought, well, why don't we do that in a way? And I had an idea for this movie, and I brought it to Greta, and we developed it together, and we wrote it together, and it felt like it could benefit from having this sort of, going back to the new wave, almost like an early new wave idea of like, let's run around Paris and do this, but it was New York. And, and they did things post-sync, which made it even easier. We were like, well, we'll have to record sound. But it was a great experience because I got to shoot for a long period of time, and I got also, I think it gave me a new, it's something you and I've talked about, and you say in our documentary about how you've made some very personal movies, that you wrote and directed, and you've also done stuff where you're an interpretive director, and things like Untouchables and Scarface and things that Mission Impossible that you felt gave you something. It got you out of your own crap, and you got to kind of do something in another way, and then you could always come back to yourself. And I felt, in a way, that's what Francis was for me. It was a way to do something that was personal, but also felt maybe more interpretive, and also making it in black and white was that too, and making it in a stripped down group. It was like a first movie I never made, and I think it informed everything I did after it. I think I kind of, I don't know, my career seems sort of broken up into almost like new first movies, and I think maybe that's a good thing to do every so often.
While we were young in 2014, were you having a midlife crisis?
Well, I think I got divorced around that time, or right around the time I was writing it, and I think the movie's not about a divorce, but I think there was something, I don't know why, but I wrote that movie at a low time in my life, and I think, and in a way, it's like a more overt comedy, but it is, it does have the sort of undertone maybe of midlife stuff.
What was your HBO experience like? Mine was a disaster.
Well, mine was too, but not because of HBO. HBO was actually totally great. Mine was me, John Franzen, and Scott Rudin trying to develop a show based on the corrections for television, and there was at some point we were all sitting in the room talking, and it became clear that none of us watched any television. And I think that was probably a sign that we should have just stopped right there and said, let's, it was a weird time. In retrospect, it was a weird time too, because now the way to have done it would have obviously been do an 8-hour thing of the book. That's what everyone's doing now. Then there was still this idea that we were making it a show, and we were going to do it over 4 years, and we were doing jumping time. It was like everything you don't want to do in a movie. It was like old age makeup, young age makeup, different actors playing the same parts. I mean, what a mess. I think, it's a terrific book. I think it's probably unfilmable. And, that was around that time too, when I was in a strange place in my life, and I think I kind of wanted just something to occupy me. In retrospect, I think it was misguided for me to try it.
But I found when I was working with them that you would get notes after notes after notes.
Well, we didn't probably even get that far. But they kind of left us alone. But I don't know. It was just it was just misguided. It was just a misguided thing.
Let's talk about divorce. What kind of films come out of it? You go first.
What kind of films that I've made come out of it, or just?
Well, I mean, I've made a divorce film too, so.
Well, I've looked at divorce from. I mean, The Squid and the Whale was divorce more from the kids' perspective. It was more like my thinking about it back then.
A witness to a divorce.
Yeah, and not understanding it in the
at
same
a young
way.
age.
Yeah, and so.
It's interesting that the Spielberg documentary is all about the divorce and how it affected his movies.
Well, I think E.T. is actually a very good movie about divorce. I mean, it's a very moving movie about divorce in a way. I mean, I think it's partly why. I remember actually I saw E.T. with my father, as I was saying. I saw a screening of it, and I didn't know anything about it except that I had a vague idea that I liked Steven Spielberg's movies and at that age. And I mean, I cried so much in the movie that I remember what shirt I was wearing because I kept picking it up to put it in my face because I could not stop crying. And I remember driving home just like spent, and my father started going into this whole thing of like that E.T. in a way was the father figure for Elliot, that he didn't have. And I didn't actually realize that. I didn't think about it that way. I just was sad about the alien, maybe dying and then leaving. And I just started crying all over again. And then I remember going to school the next day, and I said, I saw this amazing movie. I was telling all my friends, and then I started telling them and aping my father, which goes to The Squid and the Whale. I would sort of say what he had told me, which I was like, and really this E.T. is a father figure, the Peter Coyote character later suggested might become, and then I just start crying all over again and sobbing in school. It was just so moving to me, the whole thing, in ways that I was both aware of and not aware of. And I think, and that's why that movie is so important to me. I saw it with my son recently too, and when it was done, he turned to me and he said, "I cried 4 times," and I knew I felt this. I did too. But anyway, we were talking about divorce. But I mean, I guess Squid and the Whale was, I was connecting back to that time, when movies like that were very important to me, and and also kind of telling, in some ways, I guess, telling the real story of those moments. But
you see in the Spielberg documentary that he kind of blamed it on his father. And his father got shut out, even though, in fact, his mother had an affair with his father's best friend. In your case, did you side with one parent over another?
In real life, I mean, it wasn't, I guess, that easy for me. In the movie, the older character, who would have been more Jesse Eisenberg's character would have been more my kind of surrogate. But I mixed stuff up between the two of them. But,
it seems to me you showed both points of view.
Well, I think he sides with the dad.
Right.
But that was more of a narrative idea because I felt like I'd get more out of the story if he was sort of, siding with the father. Which I had some truth in it. In reality, I think I did, feel, I think it was more my mother's choice, and I felt sort of sad for my dad. I wanted him, to be okay. I was sort of, it wasn't how it was in the movie, but that was part of it. Which I think, but then later, I think once it happened, then I was sort of, saw my mom's side again, and which he does in the documentary too.
And you also see in that documentary that he, as he got older and got divorced himself, he had a different perception about the whole situation.
Right. Which happens. When I got divorced as a grown-up, I had, new, different perspective on that time.
Okay, well, I know all your movies are very carefully scripted, and everybody always asks you, is there improvisation? And you roll your eyes, say no. They say the lines.
Right.
Which is correct. Then my next question is, do you believe in lightning in the bottle moments?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think it's all about, I mean, for me, doing the script is not about taking any spontaneity away. It's about, I think, creating opportunity for it, I mean, it's not, it's all about how they're going to interpret it and what the behavior is and this kind of live moments that happen on set when we're doing this. For me, it's just like, let's have this. This gives us a foundation so that all this other, as you say, lightning in a bottle can happen.
Is there an example in Meyerowitz of this happening?
I mean, I think it's all over the place. I mean, it's not, I think improvisation gets misinterpreted as sort of this idea of like, oh, well, it's like what happens in life if somebody has a funny one-liner and we all laugh. I'm staging that funny moment and creating it, but it's all designed. I mean, it's like musical in that way. I mean, it's like, you write music for people to play, when they play it live, something amazing hopefully happens, I mean, that's what it is. It doesn't mean it's going to be, rote, that they're just playing the thing. The thing is, the live music is the thing, and that's what I'm trying to do in the movies.
But do you rehearse the actors so that you see that your ideas are working, or maybe you have to change things before you get on the stage and shoot it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I rehearse them so I can hear it, so they can hear it, so we all hear what it is, so we all know what we're trying to do. And in that way, it is, I mean, musical is the best way to describe it, because it is like
a score.
Like a score. Like when you hear it, you're like, no, there it is, that's it. And when it's off, when one instrument's off or then you feel it off. And if somebody is playing the wrong thing, and for better or worse, that's how it works for me, and also it's a lot of physical blocking too, which, you do so brilliantly, is, it's all about, people moving through space. So it's not just, the sort of rhythm of the dialogue, it's also the movement of the camera and where they say the lines, and, it's this confluence of stuff, but it isn't as rigid as it might sound. It really is also set so that all that stuff that you want to have happen happens. And I find, for me, it's more likely to happen that way.
That's all the questions.
Thank you, Brian, for doing this. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. Don't forget, you can check out past episodes of The Director's Cut wherever you listen to podcasts. We have many great Q&As coming up in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. Also, be sure to subscribe to our podcast to stay up to date on the great discussions we have coming up. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.